like the music. My name's Bryan McCleary, and I have a confession to make. My PowerPoint this morning, my presentation this morning will be PowerPoint free. So I had a boss one time who said Abraham Lincoln never had PowerPoints. And of course I replied, well, boss, you're no Abraham Lincoln. So I do, however, the bad news is I have some hokey self-serving videos that I'm going to show. So, but hopefully you'll enjoy them and kind of get a kick out of what I like to call the good side and the bad side of social media. To take us back 2 or 3 years, back to this idea of not mommy bloggers, but mom bloggers, I had a conversation with one of our digital gurus. And the mom blog phenomenon was just kind of, picking up. And, the company had done some things with product reviews and sending, product out to bloggers. But I asked this digital guru within P&G, has anybody met one of these mom bloggers? Do they really exist in the physical world? And the answer was no. Surprisingly. And I said, so no one's ever brought mom bloggers, for instance, into Procter & Gamble to have, a dialogue? And she said no. And so I said, well, let's be the first to do that. I work on the Pampers, brand. And we decided that we were going to engage with 10 or 11 top mom bloggers and bring them in to Cincinnati and really get to know them and to let them see sort of P&G and Pampers unplugged. As you might guess, Procter & Gamble can be a somewhat conservative place, and so there was a lot of resistance within the company to us doing this, which told me that we must be onto something. Whenever you get resistance, you're usually onto a big idea. And so I wanted to show some of the early days of our social media experiences and share a video that was kind of our original and early foray into social media and mom bloggers. So let's take a look at this video.
My blog is Table45.
My site is alphamom.com.
True Mom Confessions.
BusyMom.net.
Mom Central.
An Island Life.
My website is amomsreview.com.
YummyMummyClub.ca.
My thoughts, ideas, and ramblings.
The Mommy blog. Very creative, I know.
We used to think about influencers in a very traditional way, but consumers are also influencers, and there's no bigger consumer influencers than mom bloggers.
Within the social media space, you actually end up reaching hundreds of thousands of moms every week and month through blogging.
The combined number of visitors is about 100,000.
About 6 million visits since 2003.
So we decided that we were going to bring them to Cincinnati, and we wanted to kind of lay out for them what Pampers is all about, and to tell that through the eyes of the people that work on Pampers.
My name's Nancy Irvin. I am the manager of the Discovery Center.
I'm going to show you the bag. Here you go. Yeah.
I never knew how much you could love another human being.
For years, Pampers has been in a one-way conversation and really telling people about our products and telling them why our products are better. I think what we're learning is that moms have as much control of our brand as we do.
What's happened is these mom bloggers have actually become super influencers, and so it's almost like word of mouth on steroids.
The biggest concern that moms have right now is the environment and being organic. We're looking at things like different sources of material that are more natural or not oil dependent, etc. For us, having that opportunity to have a two-way conversation, it's great. It's a very new way of interacting with the consumer.
Welcome, ladies. I'm so happy to have you all here today.
The thing that impressed me is that they chose a relatively small group of bloggers, and I thought that was great because it would be much more intimate. And they actually went a little further than I thought they would go, and they really introduced us to some of the people who work here.
It was really interesting for us to meet the people behind Pampers and to put a personality and a face and an emotional quality to to diapers. We see that moms really are connected to the product.
They use their product, they believe in their product.
They really, truly care about babies, and that's not something you see with a commercial.
It's a truly family-friendly company. They walk the walk.
It's been great for me to see that these people who work here have real brand passion.
I just never knew a company could inspire their employees to love their job so much.
Everybody just seems to be genuinely happy to be here.
It's amazing how personally everyone takes their job and the vision behind trying to make a difference in the world, one small baby or child at a time.
They gave us an amazing array of ideas and suggestions on how we should be thinking about the online space and social networking. This is a very different type of communication than Procter & Gamble is used to. Whether, it's advertising, they don't like advertising. What they do like are exciting stories and fun content and videos. And those things actually can become word-of-mouth advertising if done in the right way.
They gave us two key points that I thought were special. One, be very transparent with who you are. And the second thing was be yourself and let your brand and your heart shine through.
I think that there's a lot of opportunity for transparency to really show moms the passion and all the thoughtfulness that's gone behind the brand development.
The most important thing is that somebody from Pampers is a real person and not just disseminating corporate speak.
Read our blogs, get to know us, find out how many kids we have, find out what needs our kids might have, and then just email us. We'll be honest, we'll tell you what we think, and all of our readers will get that message.
They have managed to create some ambassadors here today who feel a little more personally connected.
To come here to Cincinnati to the Pampers Baby Care Institute has been great.
It really gives us an inside look and understanding the process.
There hasn't been anything I haven't liked. I've been impressed.
It's making me want to work here.
I would love to work here, if they had one in Hawaii.
And she's our newest ABM now. So those were kind of the early days, and I know there's a lot of ad buyers in the audience, and one of the things we really struggled with was this question of reach and frequency. But what we found, I think, over the years is, and I think somebody mentioned it yesterday, that mom bloggers, especially the more widely read and influential, can have a big impact on other influencers and on consumer media. And so it's very, typical to see something start out on, one of the blogs talking about Pampers and then carry over into the consumer media. So that's been a big learning. So we really got into the space 2 or 3 years ago, worked very much with mom bloggers, started a Facebook page. We now have 500,000 fans and growing. But about a year ago, we hit a little bit of a snag. I don't know if any of you have heard about the little social media controversy that we had on Pampers last year. Has anybody? Okay, that's unfortunate. So we haven't talked a lot about it publicly, and so what I thought I would do is give you kind of the insider perspective of what it was like to be in the eye of the storm, and what some of the things that we learned along the way that might be applicable to many of you, especially on the manufacturer side, and really try to talk about how it made us a stronger brand coming out of that. So I have another video. And just to give you a little background, we came out with a new product last year called Pampers Dry Max. It was in the works for 10 years. You often think, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to create a better diaper, but I think we did have rocket scientists actually working on it. It was a product that was 20% thinner and twice as dry as any diaper that had come before. So a pretty good consumer proposition. We got off to a very strong start. The retailers loved the product. Consumers loved the product. We did a lot of pre-seeding online. We did sampling online. We sold the product in sort of a sneak preview way on Facebook. And we're off to a very strong start. One of the things is way of setup here, you're going to see some of the charges against the product that played out in social media. And a little bit of background, and this applies to any new product really across P&G or the industry, but especially in diapers. Diaper rash, and I'll try not to get too explicit here, is I can't believe I've grown up to be talking about diaper rash here. But it is one of the most common, as parents know, things that babies experience. And every day, 2.5 million, we've sort of tracked this, babies come out with diaper rash. And as you parents know, it can be a very scary experience, and the rash can actually look in many cases like something very serious, burning and that sort of thing. And so historically, we've tracked when a new product comes out, what happens with consumer complaints. And what typically happens is whenever we have a new product, even if we're just changing the color of the diaper, our diaper rash complaints go through the roof. And that's because people associate a change in the appearance of the product with the diaper rash that they're experiencing. And so they blame that on the diaper. Correlation does not equal causation, however, but in the past, all of this was fairly invisible because the complaints would come through our 1-800 line. And of course, we found now that that no longer applies, that the complaints can be very public. And so we're going to pick up the story with another video here. So let's go to the tape. This was sort of the early complaints against the product, that it was a bait and switch. We use the term chemical burn with babies, and it's a very explosive charge.
Babies get diaper rashes, but they shouldn't get rashes caused by the diaper themselves. Babies wearing the new diapers develop severe rashes resembling chemical burns.
The Consumer Product Safety Commission is investigating what's described as a handful of complaints that new types of Pampers diapers have caused severe rashes.
New this morning, some parents say that their babies got rashes, even chemical burns, after using a new kind of diaper. Now, Reuters reports that the government is now looking into complaints involving Pampers with dry max.
Some people are calling it the worst diaper revision ever. Procter & Gamble being sued by parents who say the new version of Pampers with so-called dry max technology has given their babies and toddlers rashes and blisters.
In the last 2 months, dozens of parents have contacted Watchdog to complain about Pampers Active
This is the 60 minutes of the UK.
Last week, I went to meet some of them.
And I thought I had a defective packet. There was no stuffing up the back. So I thought maybe there was something wrong with them. So I pulled all the nappies out of one packet and they were all the same.
And this was right as they were launching.
So I had to change. So I put one on her, but a couple of hours later she was wet.
This is padded up the back, and this one isn't. So that's the problem.
There's nothing on the packaging to tell you. You go out and buy what you think's a normal product and you get it home. You feel deceived and cheated.
There were times I would change her diaper and she would scratch and scratch until she was bleeding.
Sorry, we have some internal little things in here. This was an internal video.
Pampers has such a wealth of knowledge about babies that it's so great to be able to pass that information along to moms and dads online.
We have a high level of commitment to quality
at Pampers. The reason for that is because I'm a Pampers dad, and when I come home, I'm putting the product on my son and on my daughter.
Came here today keeping in mind that there are a lot of moms who are genuinely concerned.
So it's great to be here this morning with our group here, and it's a great opportunity for us to really hear directly from moms.
And I hope that I can adequately share with concerned moms how strongly I think that they're okay and how strongly I feel that Pampers wouldn't put out a product that they weren't 100% confident in.
I don't think that it's a possibility that the newer Pampers with Drymax are causing chemical burns. It doesn't make any scientific sense whatsoever. The research does not support it.
Diaper rash is extremely, extremely common. This is caused by your baby's skin being covered constantly by a diaper, and that means that it's very moist and warm in those areas of skin. Almost every baby who wears diapers at one point or another will have a diaper rash.
That was ironic in the middle of all this.
The Consumer Product Safety Commission and Health Canada have found no data linking Pampers Swaddlers and Cruisers diapers to rashes that resemble chemical burns.
Government safety leaders have not found a connection between a new kind of Pampers diapers and the severe skin reactions reported by some parents' groups.
Extensive testing of the diapers, chemical makeup, and its design has not determined a definitive link.
In HealthWorks, Pampers Drymax diapers are not to blame for severe rashes in children.
The Consumer Product Safety Commission says it has not found a link between Pampers new diapers and an unusually severe form of diaper rash.
Well, so far, safety officials say there's no specific cause linking the diapers with the rash.
But tonight, the Consumer Product Safety Commission reports it cannot find any specific cause linking those diapers to the rash.
Okay, so that was our summer. And we were, in the end, vindicated, if you will, but it kind of reminded me of the story of someone who had been under indictment in a government investigation. And when the charges were initially made, there were hundreds of media and flashbulbs, going off. When they were acquitted, he was standing on the steps of the courthouse with no one there, basically saying, "Where do I go to get my reputation back?" So what I thought I would do is give you a quick overview, and then we're going to have Bob come out and have some dialogue on some of the things that we learned through this crisis. The first is know when to hold, know when to fold. And what do I mean by this? A lot of interactive gurus and social media experts were calling on Pampers to apologize to consumers. I would say 99% of the advice that we received was, you've got to go out there, you've got to do a mea culpa. But that was the one thing that we couldn't do. While we could apologize for perhaps some of the early ways that we responded, the one thing we couldn't apologize for was the safety of the diaper. And so all throughout the crisis, we had to maintain that message that the product is safe. What I think we learned along the way is there's two ways that we could communicate that safety. Early on, we were fairly militant. I mean, we were almost outraged that people would be making these accusations, and so we tended to use terms like, there's not a single example of a baby who has received chemical burns as a result of our product, which kind of came across like we were guilty, really, and it was kind of like the Richard Nixon, saying, "I am not a crook." And what really worked better was for us to really talk about how if we thought that we're moms and dads at Pampers, and if we thought that there was a problem with the product, we would be the first ones out there pulling the Pampers from the shelf. A second thing that I think is really important in these situations is to arm your front line. And in our case, the front line was consumer relations. And we were a little slow to do that, and so a lot of the early responses that were playing out on the Facebook and some of the other social media sites were fairly robotic. And you had our consumer relations reps out there, saying things like, "Well, I'm sorry, we wouldn't expect that to happen, from our product." We even there was a promotion going across P&G that gave free dog food to every consumer that called in. And so, of course, Pampers was included in this, and so these people were calling to complain about this terrible, chemical burn, and we gave them free dog food. And every day we had our crisis meeting, and we're like, somebody's got to fix this dog food thing, and it's always, with bureaucracies, more complicated than you would think, so we took a lot of, ribbing for that. The next one is try to change the narrative. And this is probably the toughest thing to do because we were in the unfortunate situation where it was moms against Pampers. And it was an almost irresistible, storyline that a small group of moms were, taking on this mega corporation. And the sort of alarming thing about how this played out was the social media site Bring Back the Old Cruisers became nerve central for the mainstream media. And so one of the things that we did was monitor that site, and we would literally have reporters from across the country going to the administrators of the site and saying, we're the local 5 on your side in Tallahassee, and we want to interview a victim in Tallahassee. And so we kept seeing this formulaic media coverage that was basically the victims, the mom perspective, and then here's sort of a guilty statement from Pampers saying there's no issue, and we tried to really appeal to the objectivity of the media and say you really need to give equal treatment to both sides. You might want to talk to a medical professional to see if any of this rings true, but I had many media basically say, look, we don't have a lot of time. This is a good story, and the he said, she said is what our viewers, really like. So that was unfortunate. It wasn't until we started to really get other mom bloggers on our side that it started to kind of change the game. And you saw some examples of that. We had mom bloggers who originally thought that they had a problem with the diaper, but then kept using it and realized that what we were saying was really true. Another thing that's important was really track. And so we had a daily or weekly, I guess, survey that we would do. And the low point or the high point was we had 38% awareness among our consumer base, and of those, 30% said that they would not purchase the product. And so that's about 10% of the Pampers world. The next one is repeat the serenity prayer often. And so this is the idea of knowing what you can influence, knowing what you can't, and have the wisdom to really know the difference. And there were a lot of days where we knew that we were going to get the crap beat out of us, and we just had to kind of have a thick skin and, and be comfortable with that, which with a company like P&G that's into total control was one of the more difficult, fine lines to walk. Accentuate the positive. We went on a big proactive campaign. We didn't, cut marketing support. We actually took it up. We did find that it was useful to find something that we could apologize for. And so what we tended to do was say that in our initial responses, if we were not, appropriate or sensitive enough, we really sincerely apologize, and that there was more we could do in terms of, education and that sort of thing. And finally, we tried to practice what Jack Neff at Ad Age called extreme transparency. And so we actually brought media and we brought Advertising Age into our listening post, not war room, but our sort of nerve central for managing the crisis, and had them follow us around for a day. And out of that, I think, came a real turning point, and the idea that, these guys really have the best interest of consumers and moms at heart, and it's very unlikely that they would put out a product that would, that would harm babies. So that's a little bit about sort of what we went through, what we learned. And I hope it never happens to any of you, but I think we came out of it stronger, and I think we tried to put a more human face on the brand coming out of that, be less corporate, less robotic. We now have 3 community managers whose full-time job is to go out and interact in a fun, human way with consumers, to go out on other sites, because we know that Pampers is not really the site where moms go to have conversations. There's Baby Center, there's Cafe Mom, and so we spend a lot of time in those forums. And we really try to provide content that is appealing and emotionally engaging. We have Zyzo here, who does a tremendous job of creating very compelling videos about the wonderful experience that people go through having babies. So, maybe it's no pain, no gain. And so what we learned, I think, was that we had to, not to use the cliche, but have a more two-way conversation rather than simply pushing messages out, and really let people know that we're all about babies' happy, healthy development and celebrating, protecting, and helping babies in America. So that's my case study. I really thank you guys for having me here. Again, I apologize. My general manager was the keynote speaker, and she did have an issue that came up, but it's been great to be here and spend time with you. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, Bryan. All right, Bryan, I'm going to ask you to take a seat in the hot seat, and then I'm going to introduce Bob Garfield to the audience. For those of you who don't know Bob, I'll give a brief intro. He's been a long-time Ad Age columnist. He's the co-host of NPR's On the Media. He's also the author of The Chaos Scenario, and one of the key tenets in that is listenomics, which is really key and core to what Bryan and Pampers did over the course of their crisis. Bob is also newly launching on iMediaConnection.com a series of interviews that he's conducting at these events with industry thought leaders from the audience called the Bob Garfield Lounge. So I'm going to let Bob take it away to conduct an interview with Bryan.
Thank you, Nancy.
And then we'll have Q&A with the audience.
Thank you. I just want you to understand that you were witnessing something on the verge of a historic moment. Bryan talked about extreme transparency. This is from a company that, for its entire more than a century-long history, has practiced extreme opacity. I cannot believe you brought the mom bloggers into the Cincinnati compound. I mean, this is a place with 3 rings of security. They have no phone lines going in. They burn their garbage. I tried to get in once, rappelling down a helicopter line. And you brought them in, and that's so. Are things changing at Procter & Gamble because of social media?
I think so, and I think I give a lot of credit to Jim Stengel, who was our chief marketing officer for 10 years. to really, recognize that, we really had to go beyond the typical 30-second commercials that we sort of, revolutionized, and that, the times are changing, and the best way to often have a positive result is to give up control. And when you let people in, when you bring them in sort of behind the curtain, and they see the human, stories, they tend to view you not as a corporation, but as real people, as moms and dads. So I think the times are, changing, but there are still, a lot of people at P&G who, have that old Kremlin attitude that, you only say no comment and you push people back. But overall, I think there's been some positive change.
I was trying to talk to someone there after the tornadoes went through the South, and I said, "How's the weather in Cincinnati?" And the response was, "I'm sorry, that's proprietary information."
It was 70 and sunny, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. So, them's pretty words, having two-way conversations.
Yeah.
But we're talking about Procter here, and you talk about how it's a total control organization. That's kind of in its DNA. You've told what you did. How did it feel during this DryMax debacle? Was it like being Goliath, being tied up by all these Lilliputians with keyboards?
I think it was just personally a very draining, experience because, we're all, moms and dads at Pampers, and we were just horrified to watch this thing, play out, and then to have the consumer media really jump on it as a symbol, really, of the growing power of moms and social media. So it was like we were caught in this, vortex. And I think the thing that got us through was we always had confidence that what we were doing was right and that in the end we would be vindicated. But it was a horrible thing for us to go through.
In many large organizations, even in 2011, social is the organization in the marketing structure is often very little more than a flying squad of very few people with very small budget and very little political power within the organization. Where did the social team fit into this? Or were they pushed aside by the GRP buyers in this who wanted to handle things the P&G way? What were the political dynamics within the organization?
No, I don't think so. I think one of the secrets of getting through a crisis like this is to have a very close team, and so social media was very much a part of the daily, message meetings and so forth. There were some people, GRP people, that were, really recommending that we do the Toyota style, advertising, which I think is what people might expect us to do. But we thought that that would send, all the wrong signals. What we did do was try to, think about the best defense being a good offense, and taking the GRPs up, leveraging a lot of the powerful endorsements that we had received. Sort of millions of people had used this product very effectively, so 2 million moms can't be wrong.
One of the telling things in the video that you showed, by the way, great video, but fired the band.
Yeah.
Was the woman in the UK who, when she opened her package of nappies, the technology had rendered the diaper so thin that she thought something was missing, that she had a defective product. And then when her kid got diaper rash, it's like, aha.
Yeah, exactly, right.
How can I put this politely? How could you not have thought of that in advance to prepare people for the notion that the thin diaper does not mean it's less effective?
Yeah. We thought that we had done a pretty good job of educating, people about that. But when you have a product that is used so many times, I think the typical, baby gets 6 or 7 diaper changes, a day. Every single change is very acutely, felt. And so, we actually had Bill Clinton help launch the product from an environmental, standpoint. And he stood up there with the diaper, believe it or not, and said, this is the kind of product that we need to be thinking about from an environmental standpoint. But
it's a lucky thing you didn't bring him in with the mom bloggers. He would have hit on him.
Exactly, right. I think he hit on our R&D person. Anytime there's a consumer behavior change required, I think it's a very difficult, hill to, climb, whether it's, diapers or moving from, detergent to the liquid, Tide. That was sort of a very slow build, but we did think about that, but it became sort of the, the essence of the conundrum.
Yeah, so I hate to remind you of this, and I almost hate to bring it up, but in a funny way, Procter & Gamble was extremely well positioned historically to deal with this outbreak of false and malicious rumors. Because you are, after all, the company that for the better part of 50 years intermittently have had to persuade the world at large that you're not Satanists.
Yes.
So you may be the most experienced company in the world at trying to quash persistent rumors. Did your learnings from the whole Moon and Stars, ongoing fiasco inform how you treated the Drymax situation?
I don't know. I don't know that we did a great job with that because it did, persist for 50 years, and we ended up actually filing suit against the people that were, spreading this this rumor. But I think it did show us the, the power of these rumors and how they get started. One of the things that we actually kind of went to school on was Bounce fabric softener. When Bounce launched, they put out 50 million, samples and everything like that, and there were fires in dryers that were starting, around the country. And so, again, you had everybody saying, "Oh my God, this stuff causes the dryers to, to catch on fire." Well, it turns out that there's a baseline number of dryer fires that happen, every year. There had been no spike. There was just that link that was
correlation and
causation.
does
not equal causation. Yeah.
I do actually have an issue though with Bounce. The dryer sheets, they don't actually bounce.
I don't know where we got that name then. Yeah.
I want to get back to the blogging dynamic for a minute. Social media can be useful for good, and it can be useful for evil. And there was a University of Michigan study that came out in 2009, and what it demonstrated, which was something that was actually fairly intuitive, and that debunking bad information does not stop the spread of the bad information.
Yeah, I mean,
I
think we've seen that with the Donald Trump and the birth certificate.
The birther conspiracy theory is a perfect example.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to trump the social dynamic of trying to confirm in the minds of the conspiracy theorists? And by the way, this actually did grow into a conspiracy theory, which we can discuss, right? Because some people accused you of working in tandem with, the Centers for Disease Control to quash the truth about chemical burns, right?
Right.
Yeah. So how did you defeat that dynamic?
Well, I don't know that we ever defeated it. I think what we did was we marginalized it. And so, once we were able to get the sort of vindication from the government that this product is all right, the rumors, persisted, but mainstream consumers and media tended to, to discount. However, there's still sort of a nagging doubt in people's minds. They don't know exactly what they had heard, but there might be something wrong with this product, and so it is very difficult to to make these things completely go away. But trying to be positive, trying to be genuine, really reaching out is something that we've always done and continue to do.
I notice you were particularly a victim of the horrendous state of television news in this country. Lazy, careless, sensational, all of the above, right? And no matter how successful you are in tamping down the controversy online, along comes, Live at 5 to say, are diapers burning your child? And then there you go again. Would you care to launch a wholesale indictment on the journalism industry? I'm all ears.
I think I might. Diane Sawyer's okay. I think she had a bad copywriter that night. But one thing we really found was that there is this dynamic of I would call it the media taking both sides, even if they're not, warranted. So here's the one side, here's the other side. Kind of like they did with the birth certificate thing. They gave equal time to the people that were saying, there's no birth certificate, even though you could hold in your hand, the birth certificate. And, I would, constantly be mining the social media sites where everybody was congregating, and I would see playing out that the media would go to these sites and try to create stories. And so, again, as I said, they would say, we need a victim from Detroit. And inevitably, a half an hour before the story ran, I would get a phone call from Detroit, and, I would give my sort of perfunctory, response. And, I would say to these guys, look, you guys are journalists, isn't it, important that you really look at both sides? And, they were very candid that, there's an allegation made, you guys have a response, and that's the formula that, that really works. Again, it wasn't until we tried to change that narrative and bring in, others and mom bloggers that were on our side that it created, not just moms against Pampers, but now there were moms against other moms.
Yeah.
And so that changed the storyline.
I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Bob, tell me something about your family. My father's brothers and sisters were lunatics, the whole lot of them. They were just my disgraceful family on my father's side. My mother hated these people, just absolutely despised them. But for God knows what kind of mechanism of human psychology tried constantly to ingratiate herself with them. Even long after my father was died, she would invite these people over, and just hate rays would be coming out of her eyes the entire time, which made an impression on my tender, child's soul. I only mention that to say, when the mom bloggers came in to Cincinnati, everybody was all smiles. Did you actually want to stab them in the face?
We were excited, actually. There were maybe a few that we had our doubts about. There was one that kept calling me the tone-deaf spokesperson, and we were able to make up. But I think we saw it as the biggest opportunity that we had to change the game. And so again, the radical, extreme transparency really worked in our favor.
But you were gritting your teeth, aren't you?
I think a little bit. Yeah.
Nice to have you. I want to. We're talking about diapers, okay? And it was obviously a bad episode for Procter & Gamble. This is one of its biggest businesses, and 10 years, and I don't know how many tens or hundreds of millions of dollars invested in this, and you can see the whole thing collapsing before your eyes. So I get that the stakes were high, but they're not that high. I want to talk to you about autism and vaccines, because exactly the same dynamic played out with moms online that has perpetuated another false rumor that connects autism to vaccines in a way for which there is zero molecular, biological, or epidemiological evidence. There is no connection, full stop. And yet the rumors can persist thanks to, substantially, mom bloggers who have decided they're Dr. Mom, and they've gone to the University of Google, very bad university, and come to the conclusion that all of medical science is wrong. And furthermore, that there's a conspiracy between the government and pharma to perpetuate, to harm our children. Do you have anything from Procter that you can tell the U.S. government and pharma to once and for all tamp down those rumors, which have killed children in California, where whooping cough
childhood
broke
diseases
out.
are making a big comeback. Yeah. And I think.
So, what advice do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say that, having a dialogue with the other side wouldn't work, but I don't know that it would. I really think that there's very little possibility of changing, the opinions of these, of these people. But, perhaps, this idea of, transparency and, having summits, holding, briefings and so forth, and maybe getting other people besides just government, experts, involved. So, could there be moms who were convinced that autism was caused by these vaccines that then recognized, as they really researched it, that that was not the case, and that what we were really facing here was a public health scare. Perhaps there's something there. Even better would be to have sort of the counterpart to Jenny McCarthy, who is out there sort of sounding the gun. Is there somebody on the other side that could go on the talk shows and really say that the cause is not about people who believe that autism is linked with the vaccines, but the cause maybe becomes something bigger, and that is the importance of vaccines, and that if we don't stop this slide in the vaccination rates, that we could see medieval diseases coming back.
All right, Bryan, thank you. Let's can we take questions from the floor with the understanding that neither of us can see a single thing out there?
I'll guide you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Hi, this is Lori Schwartz from McCann World Group. I just had a question because you're coming from the PR side. As we look at social media strategy for our clients, we're moving away from just brand reputation management and looking at an overall social media strategy. Is that going to stay in your world, or do you think it'll move over more to, brand management, more strategy, and leave, the reputation area?
Yeah, I mean, I know, especially in the agency world, there's been sort of a family feud among all the agencies, who really, owns this. I think it's fairly simple. I think the brand and the agencies really own, setting out the broad strategy and sort of, building the house, of social media from the advertising side, from the creation of, the sites and the Facebook, and maybe even coming up with, what are the key themes that we want to achieve the objectives. And I think PR people are the best equipped to tell stories and to really develop messages that will hopefully, resonate. So not to go back to that sort of trite saying about, paid and earned media, but I think clearly brand and agencies, really own that, paid part. And I think for PR people, we're trained to basically operate in this sort of earned media space. And so that's how I see the divide.
But I have to ask you, in the midst of this crisis, were you so focused on the crisis that you didn't, that the scales didn't fall from your eyes about the power of social media? And like, holy shit, if this can destroy our Pampers business in 5 minutes, why aren't we trying to harness this very same dynamic to over time replace the 30-second spots that have dominated Procter, since the middle part of the 12th century?
Well, I think there has been, maybe it was radio back then, but or Gutenberg press. I think we've made a lot of progress. I mean, we've set goals really about what percentage of marketing budget that we want to spend on digital, and I think for some brands, it has gotten up to almost parity with the 30-second spot. Although culturally, I think there's still a challenge. I mean, the way that we still qualify initiatives is on the strength of the 30-second spot, even if we're not going to buy much media behind that spot. So I think many of the people in this room may be able to help us with how do you qualify launching a product without 30-second advertising, and what should the metrics be? Because we know what we've always done and how we measure it. If there's something that we don't know how to measure, we're less likely to to lean in. So I think there's pockets of huge passion and budgets, but there's also that old style. We need to be pushing out the messages from a one-way perspective.
Well, next time they ask how to measure, just remind them how long it took for Pampers to go from initially with one of the great rollouts in corporate history this away.
That's good measurement.
That was a pretty good measurement.
Yeah, I like that.
We have a question here.
Hey, Bryan, John Lehman from my chair. Hey, you talked a little bit, apropos to the last question about how the social media and those things are organized within the company. Can you talk a little bit about how the marketing structure within the Pampers group on the client side has changed to accommodate the different needs in marketing and content development and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, what we've developed now, and I think I see KC is in the audience, and I wanted to just give a shout out to KC because in the midst of this crisis, your CEO said to our CEO, look, we know what you're going through, and I've instructed everybody that we're not to exploit this in any way. We're not to highlight for retailers that this thing is happening because it's an industry issue, and there was just a lot of integrity there. But we have a relationship marketing brand manager now, and the idea is that they are all about creating loyalty and relationships with consumers through digital, through one-to-one marketing, newsletters, that sort of thing. And I think you're going to see more and more structures like that. And I think ultimately there won't be a need to have a separate brand manager doing digital. It will become so much a part of the way that we do business that will be the new job.
I want to ask you about jiu-jitsu. You were talking about having created brand ambassadors by bringing some mom bloggers into Cincinnati. They came as skeptics and they left as fanboys or fangirls, right? So tell me about the jiu-jitsu effect among Pampers users who were prepared to be suspicious of you and hate you and be angry with you and want you to pull the product once you were able to illuminate actually the benefits of the Drymax and the falsity of the rumors. That's kind of an invaluable thing when you turn somebody's energy against you around to your benefit. Has there been an ongoing benefit at Procter?
I think so, and I think the thing that really worked in our favor was the vast majority of Pampers users felt that the product was safe, and so there was convincing that needed to be done among that 10% that I talked about, but the silent majority were really behind us, and the operative word is silent. I mean, it's much harder for people to stand up for something than to criticize something, and that was another frustrating thing. Just the drive-by shooting-like nature of social media criticism and being able to kind of anonymously attack is something that we are struggling with. There was a Facebook site that came up during this crisis. Pampers lies while babies die.
Wow.
And we were able to get that, removed, but I mean, it just shows how out there some of this stuff can.
Well, you weren't unlitigious with the Satan rumors. Has that person heard from your attorneys?
No, and that's one thing we decided early on, that we didn't want a narrative to be Pampers suing, moms. It was a difficult, decision because I think there were some libelous things that were obviously said, but we thought that by doing that, we would be doing what people would expect a big corporation to do, and so we decided early on not to do that.
I just want to point out that with I'm Not a Crook and Silent Majority, you have invoked Richard Nixon twice in 40 minutes.
That's right, and I'm a Democrat, so I worked for a Democrat for 7 years.